The views expressed on this program are those of the producers and individuals appearing on this program and do not necessarily reflect the views of the Sun Prairie Media Center staff, its video service providers, or the staff and elected officials of the City of Sun Prairie.
Hello and welcome to Real Reviews. My name is Jamison Rabbit, and the man seated next to me, you can't tell because it's below the desk, he's got knees like flamingos. His name is Mike Roth.
I don't do any leg workouts,
Yeah?
and I put collagen injections in my kneecaps.
Wow.
It is going to be the new sexy trend. Wait until this summer.
I like it.
It's going to be hot.
It is. See him on the cover of In Style magazine. It's going to be the best. Sir, this week we have a few movies to talk about on the marquee, as well as a very interesting throwback film. And I'm going to point to you to get us started with a film that you saw this week.
All right. Well, this is the horror movie that we have this week. A lot of them coming out this month. It was
Right,
crazy.
been a heavy month for it.
It really has. We have The Turning, directed by Flora Sigmundi. We have a character named Kate Mendel. She is going to accept a job as a governess for two really wealthy orphans. She goes out to this beautiful estate. The only person there is their nanny and these two kids, and she notices things are a little wrong with these kids. They seem to know things about her that she's never told anybody or shown. Creepy things happen around the house, and it becomes somewhat of a ghost story, a little bit of a mystery of what's going on. They leave a lot of little hints of, hey, this could be something interesting that's going to be coming up in this movie, and that constant wonder of what's going on.
Okay.
I was interested in the film, but unlike a lot of movies, this one has two endings. One is typical horror movie where there's a lot of action and things are resolved, but then you are like, well, what about all these loose ends? And this kind of doesn't make sense. And then they hit you with a second one, which kind of makes the whole movie drop many points. It was an ending that confuses people so much that they stay through the credits and hoping
Hoping
that
there's resolution.
there
in it.
is something that comes out that explains all this stuff. It is. Did you go? No.
I did
Okay,
not.
so this movie, I don't like to give away endings, but people should know when you go into this movie, you may be interested for a while, but when you leave this, you are going to have a huge feeling of disappointment because it does not explain at all the movie. It's almost
So, I mean, maybe, let's say up to the 3/4 point of this movie. Where were you at with it?
by the time I was at 2/3, I was kind of invested. I felt like it was kind of a mystery and things were going to be resolved at some point. The acting was okay, nothing knocking it out of the park or anything like that, but I wanted to know what was going on. They built up a lot of suspense and mystery around this whole thing. I thought they knew where the end was. It is even based on a short story from the late 1800s.
Okay.
So I kind of figured, well, maybe this was a great piece since they took something so old and revitalized it. And instead, they had a kind of a cliche ending, and then the second ending came around, which just kind of made the whole movie just pointless. And it's kind of like that Year of Dallas, where Pamela wakes up and she's like, oh, I thought Bobby was dead.
Yeah.
That's how it kind of felt at the end of this movie, and it ruined it. It really did for me. I ended up giving this a 2, mainly because I was interested all the way up until the last third of the movie, and then it horribly dropped the ball and left me questioning why they went this direction in the first place. I probably should have researched it more. I did go online to find out if maybe I missed something with that ending, and everybody says, no,
Just
that was a confusing mess. Yeah.
That's too bad.
I still gave it a 2-star. It was interesting up to that point.
Yeah. Oh, wow. Well, that's unfortunate.
Yeah, that's unfortunate.
Maybe that's why it's a January horror movie,
Well,
not a September horror
I usually
movie.
like January horror movies.
Yeah? Have you liked them so far?
No, none of them.
The month's not over as we speak, but we'll see. The movie I saw on the marquee this week is a film from director Todd Robinson. It is called The Last Full Measure. Stars Sebastian Stan as a man named Scott Huffman. This is based on the story of a true hero and the extraordinary efforts that it took to get him recognized as the hero that he was. It is about an airman in Vietnam who was in the Air Force, William Pitsenbarger, who performed incredibly heroic feats during a bloody battle in Vietnam, saving many soldiers' lives while ultimately sacrificing his own. And the men whose lives he saved spent 30-plus years trying to get him the Medal of Honor. And this is kind of the story. Sebastian Stan stars as a guy who is a ambitious political climber in Washington, D.C. He's given this case as kind of a blow-off job of like, look, this is, these guys have been coming to us every few years asking for this. Kind of standard, you take their interviews, blah, blah, you pass it along to the next person. And he goes out and interviews the guys who were saved by him, basically, that have been putting this effort forward for all these years, led by William Hurt, who is kind of spearheading this effort. And he starts taking their stories and going to see these veterans. And you also have Samuel L. Jackson and Ed Harris and Peter Fonda. And then he goes and meets with Pitsenbarger's family, the father played by Christopher Plummer. And he suddenly becomes really invested in this. And when it should just be something that should take him a couple of 2-3 days and pass the report along, he becomes very drawn into this. And the men who are, it turns into a story that you really see how these men are still affected by this day, and he becomes invested, you become invested, and it's a story about war, it's a story about heroism and persistence, but more importantly, it's a story about how this trauma kind of shaped each man, and how some of these guys still carry this trauma from that day with them. Peter Fonda's character has severe PTSD that unfortunately is not too uncommon from especially this era. And, you have some men who suffer from survivor's guilt, shame, fear, anger, pain, all these emotions of that, and why did I live and he didn't, and this and that. And you also have the pain of the family left behind. And Christopher Plummer, as always, is just great in this as his dad. And this film is filled with solid performances. William Hurt's great. Christopher Plummer's great. You also have Bradley Whitford in here as like he's kind of the drawback in this, because I like him, but he is the slimy politician who is like constantly brought in to, I guess, give you the antagonist and be like, nah, screw those guys. We're just worried about moving up in the government, blah, blah, blah. And so the movie is interesting in that it starts to reveal little things about maybe why this Medal of Honor was not given. Okay. And there's maybe some shady political underdealings. Problem is, they never really deal with that. They wrap it up a little too tidy. The film is really heavy-handed in that it feels like every scene the director is really going for the emotional tug, going for the heartstrings.
Yeah.
With great performances from great actors. But after a while, I don't know, it feels very manipulative.
Okay.
It feels like, okay, we're going a little over the top with this. Like every moment.
Like every dog movie.
Yeah, yeah. And so when it starts to kind of delve into that political underbelly, and you start to see some things, and reports got buried. Why is this report missing? And what happened? Blah blah. And then we're just like, don't worry about it. Here's the end. And that kind of left me wanting. Of like, we could have done something really strong with this and kind of really sent the message instead of just kind of stopping short. And the movie is a look at how we treat our heroes, how we've kind of always treated our heroes, and how too many of them are kind of left behind to fend for themselves. Yeah. And how, like this group of men, they only have each other, basically. Nobody else is willing to help them or understand. And
Well, for all these years, they were trying to get this person recognized. Was it just laziness out of the?
It was a lot of guys who were just going through the motions. Like when Sebastian Stan's character goes to meet with like Samuel Jackson, he's like, "You're like the 10th person I've told this story to," and they always just write it down and pass it along, and it just never goes anywhere because nobody fights for it. Because it's been denied once, then everyone, every time it gets passed along, it's like, we've already seen this, nothing new. Move it,
Okay.
Stamp. He got a medal. It wasn't the medal that they wanted. They wanted an upgrade in a medal to the highest achievement ever. And so it took Sebastian Stan's character, Scott Huffman, to actually fight for it and dig for why he didn't get the medal.
Yeah.
And there's some great moments and some great scenes of these men in the battle in Vietnam that are really tough, and you start to understand why they are the way they are. And then probably the best part of the movie is then in the middle of the credits, as I'm walking out of the theater, the actual men who were in this unit tell the story, and tell their story and why they wanted this story told. And you see the actual men, and you realize that these guys were actually in this movie.
Yeah.
Like,
no way.
Throughout, like, oh, wait a minute, I recognize him. So, they have all the actual veterans are in the movie playing, background characters or whatever. And you see how important this was. And so I think the story is really important. The message is really important. The film is good, but I feel like it had a chance to do something a little better, a little more with what it did. But ultimately, I ended up giving The Last Full Measure 3 out of 5 stars. It's good. I will admit, it got me. Some of those emotional moments got me. I mean, it's tough. But I was hoping that they could have just drove it home a little better. But anyways,
that's too bad.
Yeah,
and also good at the same time.
It is.
It looks like it's a decent.
It's a good enough film worth
Good
checking
enough.
out. The next film we have on the marquee, sir.
This would be the big one. Guy Ritchie directs another movie. This time, something more pleasant, more like what everybody wants out of him. We're talking about The Gentleman. Matthew McConaughey. He plays Mickey Pearson. He is. American-born English gangster. He started off selling some pot when he was in college and just kind of worked his way up to be like the leading man who sells illegal pot in the European area, or at least the Britain area.
Yeah.
Charlie Hunnam, he plays Ray, his henchman. And it's mostly a story between Ray and a guy named Fletcher, who is a slimy reporter played by Hugh Grant.
Oh, he's perfect in this, too.
And this whole movie is Hugh Grant pitching a script of what Mickey Pearson is doing and his problems that he had when he was trying to sell his business to pretty much the Chinese mafia. And he wants to pretty much blackmail money out of it.
He's trying to extort money.
Because all this money is going to go to all this story is going to go to reporters if he does not get this large sum of money. We're back to kind of the original Guy Ritchie thing that people really like. A lot of gangsters, a lot of nice suits, a lot of interesting dialogue. A little bit less on Robin Hoods and and stuff that people really did not like from Guy Ritchie.
Yeah, this feels very much like a throwback to his early films. Snatch, we talked about a couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels. Kind of classic Guy Ritchie storytelling where he introduces all these really interesting characters. And like halfway through the movie, he starts really like deploying them into storylines and intermingling them, and it becomes, and he has this aesthetic of just using guys in interesting ways, like Colin Farrell's character of the boxing trainer, the coach, who first off has this odd fashion style about him, and then his fighters go out and they're like performing a heist basically, and the way he's used, and all of these guys have this kind of uneasy history between them that you're never fully sure, but like you say, the movie kind of the narrative is Hugh Grant talking to Charlie Hunnam's character and just kind of telling the story, and the interactions between these two are two guys who don't trust each other. There's like this uneasy, like, I hate you, but I'll be pleasant enough with you.
But it's funny because Fletcher is definitely attracted
Right.
to Ray, and he keeps on doing this flirty stuff, and that
And
makes
he's
it
just
even more
like
hilarious.
on the edge of getting punched out.
Mm-hmm. And because Ray
he
is
knows
just a high-strung, just get out of my...
pushing the line.
That interaction I thought was funny. In the beginning of I would say the first act, I was a little kind of off-put by the fancy clothes and the pushing of the regular Guy Ritchie style of the dialogue and a use of the C word over and over again. It's
There's
almost,
a record use of the C word.
And it almost felt like Guy Ritchie was like, oh, I'm just going to repeat this over and over again because it's going to be edgy for the sake of being edgy instead of this is what the characters are.
Right.
It felt like just a bunch of suits with blue language. But by the second act, I was really getting invested. And by the time it gets to the third act, I'm really kind of blown away. This is a rarity for me where usually I get tired of the movie by the middle and then the end. I'm kind of disappointed. In this one, I'm more disappointed in the beginning. And then it just keeps ramping up and ramping up and ramping up until you get to the end and you're like, hey, that was awesome. That was great.
That's absolutely it. It feels like he really started to kind of, like he's laying out the pieces on the chessboard in the first half of the movie. Like, all right, now let's start playing with them and seeing what they can do. And I really liked McConaughey in this.
He was good.
You know, I liked his, and it's a thing that Guy Ritchie does. I mean, he takes American actors, puts them in with his British crew. You know, he did it with Brad Pitt in Snatch. This time it's Matthew McConaughey. And, you know, so you have this weird interaction between these guys. Of course, you're going to have a lot of odd accents. Half the time you're having trouble understanding. That's just a classic Guy Ritchie. But the look, the feel, the dialogue, and just the insane situations that these guys find themselves in.
Yeah.
It's the stuff of just like great Guy Ritchie movie making that we really enjoy. He kind of got away from the things have to be in slow-mo and all the garbage that he's kind of the traps that he's fallen into time after time recently. And it feels like he said, let's get back to the basics of what I love, the movies that I used to love making.
Yeah, besides the missing of the slow-mo and stuff like that, this does have the feeling of Lock, Stock, Smoking Barrels and Snatch, but, you know, without as much glitz. There is a big fashion sense in here where it seemed like everybody bought their clothes for way more than normal people do, but...
I mean, and, you know, there's a lot of different crazy people in here. Henry Golding, who was the young, up-and-coming, ferocious, the Asian guy who was...
Dry Eye.
Dry Eye, who's going to make his mark. And we saw him in Crazy Rich Asians. He was the lead in that last year. I liked him in this. He was an interesting character. Hugh Grant, who I'm not normally a fan of, like, I was really digging him in this.
He did good as Slimy.
Yeah.
He really did good.
He really was fun in this.
And hilarious, too.
Yeah.
There was a lot of hilarious scenes in here, and Hugh pretty much stole it many, many times.
He's good. And Charlie Hunnam, who I've really liked in some things and really disliked in other things. And unfortunately, the things I've really disliked him in have been Guy Ritchie films. I think that he was used right in this one for the most part. And it felt like he had restraints on him for a while in the movie. And that's good. Because you can't just be cranking it up to 11 the entire time. There's other guys in here that can do that. And I like how he was used. And I was pleasantly surprised by this.
Yeah, I had a good time. I'm glad that you liked it because it's been a while. You usually go, oh, it's Guy Ritchie.
Yeah, I know, because Guy Ritchie has not been a name that I've enjoyed recently. But this was a good one. What did you end up giving The Gentleman?
I gave it a 4. I probably would have gave it higher if I didn't feel so disappointed at the beginning of the movie. But yeah, it just keeps getting better and better as you watch it.
I agree. I gave it 4 out of 5 as well. It's a fun flick. It's a good time. Maybe don't take mom to it. There's a lot of C words in here.
Lots of them.
But, it's a guy's movie for sure. So check it out. All right, let's take a look back, sir, for our movie throwback.
I'm excited. I've been telling him for days I'm excited for him to review
We're going back to the year 2003. For our throwback movie, it is a film called The League of Extraordinary Gentlemen.
Because we got monsters and you got gentlemen.
We have gentlemen. This one's full of extraordinary gentlemen. From director Stephen Norrington. This is a film that stars Sean Connery, among a whole host of other people. We put together a group of literary icons from various times. We team them together in an adventure. You have Connery as Alan Quartermain. You also have Dorian Gray and Captain Nemo, and of course his first mate, Call Me Ishmael. The great Tom Sawyer is in here, the Invisible Man, Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde, Mina Harker. The whole crew is here with superpowers that you never dreamed they would have. I don't remember Dorian Gray being invincible.
No, he really shouldn't have been in this at all.
They're all battling the nefarious madman known as the Phantom, who is attempting to start a new world war. This movie is an interesting concept, right? And I enjoy the beginning of it as we are meeting everyone and kind of getting to know these people. And I enjoy Sean Connery for the most part in the beginning. And then this movie becomes a complete mess. Oh, my Lord. I have some annoyances with just the way this movie was made.
It's loud.
Yeah, there's some really, really terrible CGI in this movie.
And bad rubber suits.
Yeah, I mean, Mr. Hyde is, and when Mr. Hyde fights another guy who looks like Mr. Hyde towards the end of this movie, that looks awful. Also, there's a large set piece that takes place in the streets of Venice, where there's a car chase through the streets of Venice. Only problem is, there's no streets in Venice.
No.
Venice has no streets.
Well, it's not historically accurate at all.
Also, Venice, a city that is completely canals, very shallow canals. I don't know if you can just run a submarine
you
through them.
You would not be able to do that.
That kind of annoyed me.
And also, this is the last film of Sean Connery. He turned down Gandalf. Would have made him tons of money. He turned down the architect in The Matrix. Would have made him lots of money. He was pretty much done as an actor, but for $17 million, you could give him a script he didn't even understand, and that ruined his career.
It ended a couple of careers. Sean Connery's done. The director, Stephen Norrington, who had made the first Blade movie, he swore to never make another film after this. Yeah. And he hasn't. He held his word. He's like, I'm never making anything ever again. This movie is a bit of a mess, kind of in every way possible. I'm watching it, and it kind of reminded me, compared to like The Phantom or The Spirit, like those films that came out roughly around this time, they were all just incredibly messy.
They had a lot of problems. One of the problems was Sean Connery. He took up the majority of their budget when he said he'll do the movie for $17 million. Everybody else, when they're given a bill like that, they're like, we could replace Sean Connery. Yeah. But for some reason, they're like, all right, we're going to blow our budget on one actor. We better highly focus on him, which really screwed up the people who made the comic book, which is a fantastic
Alan Moore's comic book is great.
Yeah.
It's nothing like this.
No, and he sued them for making his comic book look so bad. But they are going to remake this eventually. Yeah. They're going to make it more female, so I'm assuming they'll probably concentrate a little bit more on Mina and hopefully follow the storyline of the comic book instead of going, let's throw $17 million.
Shake some of the stink of this off of it. It's just, the weird thing to me is it just feels like it's edited so terribly, and it doesn't feel like it understands what it wants to do with these characters. And so it kind of just jumps from like set piece to set piece. Yeah. And it's a lot of like, well, we got to go there now. We need to go there now. This is next. And the interactions between the characters, who I think are kind of interesting characters. And like I said, I like the concept of using these literary icons, but it feels like the interactions between them just mean nothing throughout the movie. Yeah. Like they talk, and it's just like nothing means anything.
But with this particular movie, I did the same thing as I did with Twilight. The concept of Twilight is fantastic. You got werewolves, you got vampires. What can go wrong? And I've watched that movie probably 3 times, and each time I hate it a little bit more. Yeah. I'll never watch it again. League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, I watched it the first time, I'm like, wow, that was a train wreck. And then I watched it again, and I liked a little bit more of it, and I liked a little bit more of it. There's not too much steampunk-related material out there. This was the first. They don't do very much even after this.
Well, there's probably a reason.
And it's probably. And the concept is great, taking these classic, very classic literature characters and put them in a settings where we are going to have the Avengers, but let's make it old-timey. Yeah. And introducing people like Tom Sawyer, which was an add-on, and DeLorean Gray. I mean, come on. Yeah. He's not really.
Yeah, boy.
And Mina is.
No,
I mean,
she's a vampire.
She's a
Why
vampire,
not?
and she's not even a literary classic.
Yeah.
But her character is.
We
very
needed a
interesting.
vampire.
We do need a vampire.
Yeah, it's man, it's funny because you kind of enjoy this as a guilty pleasure.
Yeah.
Another one of my friends who I really respect, I was posting about this on Facebook, and my buddy Danny, who I really respect, thumbs up Danny, he said kind of the same thing, like, yeah, I understand this movie's terrible, and he compared it to Van Helsing.
Yeah.
Of like, I understand it's terrible, but it kind of grows on me. This was the first time I've ever watched this movie all the way through. I've seen like little bits and pieces on like cable and stuff.
Yeah.
I don't know if this movie can grow on me.
Okay. Wait 2 years.
Yeah, revisit it?
Just try to think of, like, 2 years from now, think of, like, some of the characters you thought were interesting, like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, how he's kind of an addict. You'll watch it again. You'll still hate it. And then in 2 more years, I'm going to ask you to watch it again.
This is a long-term plan.
It's a long-term
Mike's
plan.
like a dealer trying to get me hooked on this thing.
Before you're dead, you're going to be like, that's all right.
Yeah, I loved it, too. It's great. Boy, oh boy, I don't know. Let's take a moment to look ahead at what is coming soon. We're looking to the weekend of February 7th, sir. And there's one movie coming out that weekend.
Yeah.
It is, and it has perhaps the worst title of the year. Birds of Prey and the Fantabulous Emancipation of One Harley Quinn.
Yeah.
We are bringing Margot Robbie back from her successful run as Harley Quinn in the Suicide Squad.
Well, you got to remember it was
Academy Award winning. And we are teaming her with Mary Elizabeth Winstead, who plays the Huntress, Journey Smollett-Beck, who plays Black Canary, and Rosie Perez, who plays Renee Montoya. And they are going to go out there. Now, I know you're a big Rosie Perez fan. Love her. Huge fan of hers.
Not
Oh,
really,
Mikey!
no.
But this is we're getting Harley Quinn and the girls together.
Not a fan of Fran Dresser either.
No,
so I'm really glad
hot
she
take.
doesn't make movies anymore.
I think she was in League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. Anyways, that's the movie that will be coming out the weekend of February 7th. I'm looking forward to the Oscars are coming up. February 9th is the Oscar telecast. That means that next week we're going to have to be making our picks and predictions, handing out our awards to who we would give the award to.
I'm going to do an early plug. Marcus Theaters is doing a thing where they're going to play all the films that made it to the theaters all in 2 days, and I believe for like $70, you also get 5-minute movies and you get your dinner. Too.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
I also
that's what
think
they're saying.
I'm going to try and get there to get the shorts package that they do with the animated shorts and the live action shorts. I feel like that's the only way you can really get them is when they put those together.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
Now they got one movie I didn't see on each day.
I see that, yeah.
Yeah.
Parasite, and you got JoJo,
but I believe,
separate days.
I believe Parasite is going to be streaming next week or something like that.
Yeah.
JoJo, they're waiting.
Yeah, they are.
Jerks.
And so again, as Mike said, we want to thank our sponsor, Marcus Theaters, The Palace here in Sun Prairie. Thank you for sponsoring this program. We always appreciate it. Like you said, you can go watch all the Best Picture showcase before the Oscar telecast, so you can be as informed as we are when we're making our picks for next week's show. Next week, we're also going to be talking about and we're going to give another horror film a shot, Gretel and Hansel.
I'm looking forward to it. I'll tell you how disappointed I am next week.
All right. Looking forward to that. We also have the rhythm section, Blake Lively film. We'll be making our Oscar picks and projections. And then the following week is an episode that I always have fun with. We are going to be doing our most anticipated lists, talking about the year ahead and what movies we're going to be horribly disappointed by at the end of the year.
So all those people who only watch our show for the throwback, unfortunately, we're not going to be making you happy.
No
for
more
a
League of
couple
Extraordinary
weeks,
Gentlemen for a couple weeks. Sorry.
We'll make up for it.
Yeah. I also, you know what? This week I watched Pain and Glory, which was like the only Oscar-nominated movie that I hadn't seen. The Antonio Banderas, Penelope Cruz film.
Okay. I was thinking of the Mark Wahlberg.
Pain and Gain with the
Yeah,
Rock.
I hated that movie.
Pain and Glory, pretty good. Pretty good. I'm into my quest right now to watch 4,000 films.
Yeah, I saw that
four
on
short.
Facebook.
I'm 4 short.
How do you remember every single
There's
film?
an
like
app
that?
called Letterboxd, which you should check out, and you can follow people and follow films and review films yourself. And it has every single movie ever made, going back to the 1800s. It's got films that my friends have made, like small independent films. It's
Really?
on there.
Huh. So
It's incredible.
Main Street Meets. That's
Main
on
Street
there.
Meets is on there. Absolutely. I
Nice.
gave it my score.
Very cool.
Yeah. So anyways, I've been tracking every movie that I've ever seen in my life, and I'm currently at 3,996, sir.
You're over 4,000.
We're
You
getting
don't
there.
remember movies that you probably sat in front of as a toddler.
You don't.
You
know.
don't. You
Remember
are
my
not
first
that
movie,
good.
and I was yet I was just a toddler.
What
when I
was
went
it?
to go see Sleeping Beauty.
What?
Yeah.
Okay.
Pretty good stuff. All right, let's get out of here, sir. We're going to be talking about Oscars next week. But until that time, I'm Jamison.
I'm Mike Roth.
Thanks for watching.